Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're embarking on a pretty incredible, mythic journey, taking us all the way from the morning star to the fallen mirror. We're going to be exploring this fascinating intersection of philology and psychology to really understand how natural, cosmic ambition was completely rewritten by institutional control. We're going to look past centuries of linguistic narrowing to uncover the raw, unedited light of an ancient threshold. And as you'll see, we'll discover how a beautifully complex cosmic cycle was systematically flattened into a super simple moral binary. Let's dive right in.
We're starting our journey with the voice of Thar. He's the original archetype of the morning star archetype, coming straight out of ancient Semitic and Ugaritic horizons. In this reimagined dialogue from our sources, Ethar reminds us that his complex ascent, it wasn't actually a rebellion. When he looked up at the high throne of heaven, he just saw an unfilled space. His ambition was this natural, unifying movement of the cosmos, a singular impulse to reach right across cosmic boundaries just to see if his light could sustain the height. It was really an exploration of natural limits, not a moral failure. And responding right back from the shadows, we have Lucifer, the figure who ultimately became the linguistic scapegoat for all this natural ambition. As this quote highlights so well, language itself was weaponized here. Through this process of linguistic narrowing, early institutional scribes took this profound cosmic curiosity and just turned it into a brand of shame. A totally natural movement of the cosmos was literally rewritten into a children's fable of disobedience. It became just a simple, scary story, completely designed to ensure societal borders stayed small and, easily manageable. Section 1. The Alchemy of the Reach, Deconstructing Linguistic Spells. Let's dig into this etymological synthesis to see how these spells actually worked in practice. Okay, what is just absolutely fascinating to me is the pure linguistic reality of the word itself. The name Lucifer actually derives directly from the Latin roots lux, meaning light, and fer, meaning to bring. In ancient Greco-Roman astronomy, this term was simply a physical observation. It was a completely neutral light bringer, marking the planet Venus. It was entirely separate from any theological association with evil whatsoever. It was merely a celestial marker, basically signaling that the deepest hour of the night is the womb of the dawn. When you put these two paradigms side by side, it's pretty wild. You see exactly how institutions flattened a beautifully complex archetype into a very strict moral binary. The original Lightbringer inherently occupies the boundary of night and day, right? It represents this ambiguous state of existence that really resists simple categorization. But then, look at what it became. A brand of shame used to ensure social order remained completely tidy. By taking a symbol of psychological curiosity and weaponizing it into this binary of good versus evil, institutional powers essentially stripped the nuance of human experience right out of the narrative. Which brings us to Section 2, the iron of institutional control and semantic drift. And, this shift didn't happen by accident. It was a very deliberate process of social engineering spread over centuries. If we track this along a historical timeline, we move from the early Ugaritic era, where a deity's ascent reflects the tragic, complex reality of ambition, right into the Greco-Roman era, where the celestial marker is totally neutral. But finally, we hit the institutional religious era. And here, the scribes realize something important. Messy, uncontainable truths are really hard to govern, so they use language as a tool for control. They transitioned fluid, threshold terms into strict binaries. Suddenly, the complex star was shoved into a narrow cage of pure good versus pure evil. Section 3, the parable of the king and the scribe. To really wrap our heads around this institutional flattening, let's explore this powerful parable from our sources. The story goes that the great king possessed a magnificent prism that sat right on the threshold of his palace. When light passed through it, it fractured into this messy, uncontainable spectrum that perfectly reflected the complex impulses of the human heart. But the high scribe, well, he feared this cognitive dissonance. He feared the questions it provoked. So he took his iron tools and just ground that prism down until it only had two flat sides, pure white for obedience and total black for damnation. And just like that, the original Lightbringer was trapped in a binary cage, all to enforce social order. So it all boils down to this deeply personal question. Why do we, just like the scribe, fear the cognitive dissonance that comes with exploring our own depths? Why do we constantly project our chaos onto some external villain instead of just looking inward? Section 4, integrating the Jungian shadow. The answer to that question lies in psychology, specifically how the morning star represents the Jungian archetype of the shadow. let's face it, human brains are naturally wired for binary categorization. Processing the world in strict categories of safe or unsafe takes way less cognitive energy. We really like our lazy comfort zones. But reaching across cosmic boundaries inherently forces the human psyche completely out of those comfortable binaries. The morning star, sitting right there on the threshold, demands that we stop repressing our dark or chaotic impulses and instead bring them directly into the light of consciousness. That resulting discomfort, that cognitive dissonance we were just talking about, that's actually the exact psychological trigger for higher-level problem solving. As this quote captures so perfectly, true self-awareness requires us to face our inner darkness. When institutions flatten the myth of the morning star, they're essentially trying to kill the psychological curiosity needed for genuine personal evolution, replacing it with this artificial, mandated purity. And that leads us to Section 5, the paradox of dissent. Let's see how this all builds into our final philosophical takeaway. This concept right here, the paradox of dissent, is absolutely the beating heart of the Morningstar philosophy. It teaches us that illumination actually requires navigating the very darkness it seeks to transform. I mean, the brilliance of a star is inextricably tied to the blackness surrounding it, right? The journey toward the divine, or toward self-actualization, involves a necessary descent into the messy material world. Therefore, the fallen and risen stars, they aren't enemies at all. They are mirrors, reflecting a single, beautifully unified cosmic cycle that every single one of us experiences. So think of this as your psychological blueprint for personal evolution, derived straight from the archetype of the Lightbringer. First, you have to leave the safety of your binary thinking. Next, you endure that really uncomfortable cognitive dissonance on the threshold. Then, you actively face and integrate your inner shadow, totally refusing to project it outward. And finally, you recognize that this messy, uncontainable process is exactly what turns your darkest unconscious impulses into your highest potential and genuine wisdom. Which brings us full circle right back to Lucifer's dark critique, perfectly encapsulating why these archetypal symbols matter so much. When we look at the fallen star, we are not looking at an enemy. We are looking at the bridge to the unified reality we've repressed for centuries. We are seeing the mirror of our own incredibly complex human experience, the absolute proof that light simply has no meaning and no context whatsoever without the darkness we must inevitably navigate.
Which leaves us with a final thought to end this explainer. You have seen exactly how language was used to flatten a profound cosmic cycle into a mere tool for compliance. Now the choice is up to you. Are you ready to embrace the tragic complexity of your own ascent and descent? Will you stay in the scribe's comfortable binary cage, or will you dare to integrate your shadow and discover the true weight of your own light? Something to think about. Thank you so much for joining us, and keep questioning the borders of your world.